President Trump's legal team have submitted their response to the Justice Department's attempt to halt a federal judge's order stopping them from reviewing documents taken from his Mar-a-Lago residence. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is joining us again to talk a little bit more about this, to break down the legal issues. We also have CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. So I just quickly saw that it was like a 21-page document, I think. Scott, just what's in the Trump team's response?
And this is the argument we expected. It was formally made in federal court in the Southern District of Florida. The Trump team wants that big red light to stay in place. They want the federal judge to continue to hold off the Justice Department from resuming its review of the records it seized August 8th from Mar-a-Lago. In the first line of the court filing, they say it all. They say the investigation is, quote, unprecedented and misguided, and that the judge in originally holding the Justice Department at bay in their investigation has brought order from chaos and restored order from chaos. They want the Justice Department to continue holding off until that special master, that independent third party, can be chosen, put in place, and complete his or her review. What they've done here is continue to draw out the clock and to delay matters, which in itself may be working in the Trump team's favor. The longer the Justice Department is held back from investigating, according to the Justice Department, the more pain and risk its investigation experiences because of the delay. It's really an argument we expected, but laid out over 24 pages in a way that the judge will consider in Florida.
This special master that's going to be brought in, right? This person isn't deciding whether or not the Justice Department has the right to investigate or, you know, that kind of thing. They're just basically reviewing the documents, but the criminal investigation continues, goes on, right?
Well, the criminal investigation involving the documents must be on hold. They can't go back to those documents, review them again, sift through them again, do forensics on them again, or use them potentially in some of their forthcoming filings in court until the special master's done, until the special master and the court agree on what can be segregated, what can be pulled out, what can return to the Justice Department for its usage. But the investigation can continue, either through human sources, through interviews, through other means. They still can move forward with an investigation, just not using all those documents seized in such high-profile fashion on August 8th.
Jessica, you know, part of the argument that Donald Trump and his attorneys issued today was that this is really a storage issue that just sort of spun out of control. This is much more than about storage of documents.
Yeah, this is not just me checking out the library books for too long. This is about so much more than the storage of documents. And we know that because we know that there are two investigations going on here. Scott, in his excellent reporting, has laid out that there is an ongoing criminal investigation. Again, not just a storage issue. There's also an investigation by the national security community to determine how and whether and how much our country was put at risk as a result of apparently these very sensitive documents being stored inappropriately and potentially falling into the wrong hands. One of the key parts about this motion is that the Trump team really doesn't address the fact that while Judge Cannon says the national security community can continue with its investigation, they've said, no, we can't. They told us last week what we already knew, which is we need the Department of Justice, we need the FBI to continue with that investigation. So we're stalled out as well. Scott brought up such an important point, which is the delay. And the Department of Justice has said the delay puts us at risk, it puts the investigation at risk. So this is not a partisan statement. I know it will sound like one, but a judge who looks at the facts and looks at the law, a judge of any stripe nominated by any president, will turn down this motion for a special master. But the delay in and of itself is a win.
Because, Scott, just so people understand, even though, you know, Donald Trump has not said that he's running for president yet, that would impact the investigation. Because there is a tradition where, you know, the Justice Department would halt an investigation into a potential candidate. And so the longer you can sort of drag out this court case, there's a possibility it could overlap into a campaign announcement. Right, Scott?
Yeah, we actually have entered that window of time in which the Justice Department tends not to file publicly criminal charges or make criminal investigative announcements before an election. it's the 60-day window, and we're inside the 60-day window. But there's a complication in this case. Donald Trump is not a candidate for any office, and most certainly not in the midterm congressional elections. So that may not be operative here.
But Scott, what if he was to declare, that he was going to run for president? Say he did it right after the midterm elections. Would that mean that the DOJ investigation would have to grind to a halt, or maybe they wouldn't stop it? Maybe they would just do it. They would be sort of more private about it. But what sort of impact would it have if he announced that he was running for president before we even get the special master to look at any of the documents?
No, that's a good question. I think in part because there's been this speculation that he's considering announcing a candidacy to stall any criminal investigation of him. He wouldn't be a candidate in this year's election. So again, that 60-day window may not be operative, but it gives such ammunition to the Trump team to paint any investigation as political, as a campaign effort of the Biden administration. For public relations purposes, it would fuel him with some amount of ammunition. Here's the thing. The Department of Justice is going to respond to this Trump filing, likely going to respond by the end of the day. And then come more filings, then come more filings. If you're covering the federal court system and there's a betting line, always bet the over in terms of how much time is going to be taken and how much paper is going to be submitted. They really have delayed things already, and there's no end date in sight for this delay.
Jessica Levinson, your final thought.
If I could pick up on what Scott said, it's exactly right. There is no legal consequence that attaches to the former president becoming a current candidate, but there's a huge political consequence. The Department of Justice does not have to follow its policy that it basically does nothing with respect to the electoral calendar in that 60-day window. I suspect that they will, but all it does is change the political narrative from the former president saying, they're going after me, this is just a political witch hunt, there's no there, to they're going after me, this is just a political witch hunt because I'm Biden's opponent. It's a political shift. It's not a legal shift. I'll be really interested to see after the government responds, and frankly, this should be an easier response, what Judge Cannon does. Does she try and cut this off and say, I'm going to go ahead and stay part of this process. I didn't realize the national security community couldn't continue. Or will she stand her ground, at which point I think this goes up to the 11th Circuit. And then as Scott said, you always bet the over on how many filings there will be. The more we talk about this, the more it's delayed, the bigger win it is for the Trump team.
Okay, so one more question. I know I said last one, but one more. Who's on the 11th Circuit? What do we expect there?
Great question. So right now, that is a majority conservative circuit. Now, there is one special master who, if chosen, would potentially conflict out one of the Republican appointees. That could shift the balance in the 11th Circuit. Right now, we don't know what's going to be appealed, how much of any order is going to be appealed. And it would initially, I think, go to a 3-judge panel. We don't know who would be on that panel, but the 11th Circuit is known as a conservative circuit. That might be part of the reason why the Department of Justice basically said to Judge Cannon, why don't you go ahead and reconsider and filed a notice of motion to appeal instead of immediately just filing that notice of motion and the motion to appeal. They might be hoping they can change Judge Cannon's mind because they're not so sure what's going to happen on the 11th Circuit.
All right. Jessica Levinson, Scott MacFarlane, thank you both.
Thank you.